tech companies come into the space who perhaps don't know everything about payroll or pensions, but they can instantly spot where the weaknesses are. Rather than payroll companies or pension companies doing tech, we're now seeing tech companies do payroll and pensions. But it's actually brought a really new, refreshing outlook on the industry because you're identifying challenges that maybe haven't been seen before. You're so in the weeds, you can't always see where a process has become archaic. And I think it's been a really interesting kind of evolution in the space anyway, just watching these kind of two worlds come together. Today's episode of the Payroll Podcast is sponsored by Deel. Now take a moment to consider the following pre-show scenario. Imagine you had to visit 6 different houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and the pans, another has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate exactly the same way, using 6 different tools and platforms just to play their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll, and that's today's sponsor. That's Deel. That's Deel. And Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise company, a small business, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, and more, Deel's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and instead provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes in payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to change your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes to book your demo with Deel today. Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nick Day, and I'm CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We're specialist payroll recruiters, and today we're going to be diving into the transformative world of payroll and pensions technologies with the two absolute pioneers in this field. Because today we're going to be joined by James Whittingham, who's Chief Commercial Officer at Mantle Services. They're a leading global pension software provider, already known for their innovative solutions, which we'll get into that later on during the show. But shall we just say we're also joined by not one, but 2 special guests, because alongside him, we have Alex Kill from Modulr, a revolutionary API platform that is simplifying payroll through cutting-edge technology. Technology is definitely the subject for today, and I'm going to get James and Alex to share their expert insights on how we can modernize payment systems within payroll and pensions. I'm hoping they're going to discuss their strategies for navigating upcoming industry challenges and how technology can really streamline complex operations, particularly those we know we're going to be faced with in tomorrow's world. So I've invited them both to share their wealths of knowledge. They're both in the Fintech sector. James in particular has led several high-growth global ventures, and Alex is specializing in helping payroll become more simple. He's been helping cut those long, cumbersome hours it often takes to manage manual payroll processes into often just seconds. So without further ado, welcome Alex, welcome James to the Payroll Podcast. How are you both feeling today?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction as well, Nick. That was very good.
Now, super excited to have you both here. I'm going to ask a question, ask all of my guests with this. I'm going to come to you first, Alex, for this one, because I know you're fully immersed in the world of cutting-edge payroll solutions. So what does the word payroll mean to you?
I think if I was going to put it back to you in a word, it would be undervalued. And I think it undervalued probably in a couple of different ways. I think the appreciation of the role that it plays, not only in an individual person's life, but in society in general, I think it is incredibly undervalued. But I also think speaking to so many people in the payroll industry who are on the front line delivering payroll to their clients, it can often be quite an undervalued service in the wider service that they offer as well. And I think sometimes practices don't often understand just how vital a payroll service can be to a customer, and ultimately the role that those payroll professionals are providing as part of the wider services as well. So I would say, if I was to summarize in a word, it would be undervalued for sure.
Yeah. Hard not to disagree with that. In fact, I saw, because we're recording this in the middle of National Payroll Week, of course, and I've seen some of your posts and your hashtags to really celebrate payroll professionals, because we don't celebrate them enough. And I'm sure we'll get into that during the course of today's show. How about yourself, James? Maybe I should be asking you, what does the word pensions mean to you, or what does the word payroll mean to you? I'll let you choose which word resonates best.
I think on the payroll side, I think undervalued is a good word. I was trying to think of what word I could come up with, and it's one of those things where people treat it as a hygiene factor, and people just expect it to work, and people don't really think about the complexities behind the scenes of all the different moving pieces that go into making it happen. But it's the first thing that people will complain about if it doesn't go right, and it's so critically important to everyone. It just has to work. And certainly in my career, I've been in businesses, organizations and places where it's worked really well. And I've been in businesses where it hasn't worked well. And it's a pretty painful process when the latter happens.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we're going to talk today about how we can get those processes really efficient, how we can use technology and leverage technology to make them compliant and effective and cut some of those manual hours. I'd love to know that. Let me come back to you, Alex, briefly. If you can and I've given a brief introduction to your expertise and what you're doing at the moment, but I'd love to know a little bit more about your evolution in this field for yourself and where you've seen fintech really start to influence the world of payroll.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's been quite a whirlwind journey. I mean, I only really joined this space a couple of years ago, and even in that couple of years, the tech and the ways people have really been able to utilize tech has come on in leaps and bounds. And you see the way that payroll continuously has to evolve, inevitably because of the landscape around it. But I think just the opportunities that are there that exist within payroll and the way, like I said before, you can kind of push it over service has continued to change and grow. And it's been a really fascinating journey for me to join this space and to learn and understand just not only the complexities, but also, I think really importantly, the characters and the people that sit behind the payroll and how, they are implementing it as well. It's such a broad range of individuals that seem to come into this career and thrive and enjoy doing the role that they're doing, which has been equally as fascinating to learn about and experience as well. So yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting journey for me, but I think what I could probably take away from it certainly is just how, as I mentioned before, important the role is that these people are doing. And that is just the more people I meet in this space, the more that kind of resonates with me. And I think as a tech company that looks to support these people and to provide them with something that is going to make their lives easier, but also ultimately, potentially make clients' lives easier as well. It's such a well thought about and well, I'm trying to think of the right word here, a very intellectual space where people really understand the market they're in and really fight hard for the clients that they are working for as well. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating sector to be involved in for sure.
Well, I'm excited for you. I think I've been in this industry for 22 years now, I think. And I think the last two have been the most exciting. So I think you've timed it pretty well. And we're seeing a lot of people come into the industry because I think they're recognizing there is an opportunity for new technological innovations to really have an impact in this space. And obviously, James, this is something you've been very heavily involved in yourself. I think something that I'm really interested to know from your perspective is when I joined this industry, you couldn't really talk about payroll without talking about pensions at the same time. It used to be the Institute of Payroll and Pensions Management. And then the next 10 years, there slowly starts to become a little bit of a divide between the two. It wasn't always associated with pensions. But now, having you on the show today, I know you've got a great relationship that's evolving with Modulr and what you're doing as well. I wonder if you could just share your experience in how pensions has evolved and why actually we need to be thinking about these things cohesively and together as we move into the new future. Yeah,
I think that's right. I mean, if you think about whether it's payroll and salary or whether it's pension payments, ultimately at the end of the day, people expect a sum of money to reach their bank account, and that's how they live their lives and function. And like I said earlier, it's something that they just expect to happen. And I think that the history of pension payroll is very akin to the history of salary payroll, which is like things used to be done with cash, and then it evolved into things like checks, and then it evolved into bank transfers. And I guess where we're coming from, you mentioned I'm from a fintech background, and I've been heavily involved in lending businesses, which is obviously there's a big element of transactional nature there. I've been involved in payments businesses, and it was when I got involved with the pensions world, and this is my first foray in my career in the pensions world, and I looked at how things were done in the pensions world when it comes to payroll. There's a whole bunch of technology and automation and exciting things happening at the front end in terms of sort of member engagement and the way things are calculated and understood and tax payments are calculated, etc. it was when it got to that last hurdle at the back end, and I looked at it and I went, hang on a minute, that feels a bit archaic. That still feels a bit offline, for want of a better word. And that's where the whole concept of how do we improve the payroll element of pensions came about, and the conversations with Modulr.
So I find it really fascinating because I think this is the first time, certainly over the last 2 years, and you came into the industry, Alex, where we're starting to see, and I hope this is taken the right way, we're starting to see tech companies come into the space who perhaps don't know everything about payroll or pensions, but they can instantly spot where the weaknesses are. Rather than payroll companies or pension companies doing tech, we're now seeing tech companies do payroll and pensions. But it's actually brought a really new, refreshing outlook on the industry because you're identifying challenges that maybe haven't been seen before. You're so in the weeds, you can't always see where a process has become archaic. And I think it's been a really interesting kind of evolution in the space anyway, just watching these kind of two worlds come together. And we're seeing these tech companies now take on really experienced payroll staff and vice versa, payroll companies kind of get that tech talent in and really make new innovative solutions on the back of that. I'd love to know, maybe I'll come back to you, Alex, for this one. What are some of the challenges, though, that you've been faced with as a result? Because as using James's words, I'm sure some of the processes you've been trying to streamline must have been quite archaic sometimes when you come across them.
Yeah, and I think an interesting word to throw out there would be potentially complacency, and that would be complacency on the processes that have been in place in the past that ultimately people have had to accept and put up with. I mean, it was only in the last year we've been talking to clients who have been saying that, they've still been faxing across payments to banks to be able to facilitate them. And now that facility has only just been switched off. And you would think, in the day and age that we're in now, is that really something that people have still had to do? And the answer is yes, that has still been a facility that's been used. And I think even if we look now at the way that people try to interact with banks to be able to move money around and make payments on behalf of businesses or for their own business, they still find it incredibly difficult to do. And ultimately, coming into this space, what we've had to accept as a tech company is, one, we want to innovate for sure, and we want to find ways to really move the bar and set a new standard. But also, there is a huge amount of people in there that are trying to do really simple things that we as normal people on a day-to-day basis would find really, really simple, that actually for a business, it's incredibly difficult. And you think, if we all went out for dinner and one of us paid and we wanted to transfer some money across, by the time we left that table, we could all do that. We could log onto our phone, we could quickly set something up, and within 30 seconds, the other person receives it and that's it. But actually for businesses, it's not often as simple as that. And they're having to use old legacy processes of uploading files or manual entry, or, even to the point of having to use card readers still and physical devices to be able to set things up, are all these challenges that they still have to face. So I think for us, it's like I said, how do we innovate and we find new ways to overcome challenges and things, but also how do we support with some of the legacy things and the complacency that I think has existed in supporting businesses. And for payroll in particular, I think, James, you made the point perfectly of people expect these things to happen, but what happens when they don't, or what happens when things go wrong? And I think that's one of the really important things that we try and focus on when looking at payroll and tech is it's easy to potentially to get things up and running, but then when those emergencies do hit, how do we solve for those as well? So I think that's been a real challenge for us for sure, is how do we ensure that we can make sure people get their money on time every time? But if things don't happen first time, we need to find a way and a contingency to be able to support those too. And I think if you look in the media, there's been some incredibly high profile news stories that even over the last couple of months where either Bax unfortunately wasn't available due to the Microsoft outages, or there's been some really specific businesses that have fallen foul of not having contingency solutions. And I think those sorts of things are really important to be able to overcome. But on a basic level, if you don't have a simple solution in place to deal with those on a granular level, let alone at these sort of enterprises or across the country, then you're going to have problems. So we're desperately trying to lean into that to make things as simple for people as possible.
Fantastic. And James, are you facing similar challenges in the pension side of things, or are they unique? Are they different in your space?
I think so. I guess two points. Just playing on what Alex said. I think there's definitely, given the consumer experience that people have these days with payments, and it is, I can go on my app, I can transfer, I can pay someone some money digitally. It is a case of like how people have an expectation now in the business world, in the SME world, and the corporate world to have that same experience. So there's definitely a heightened expectation that things are like they are in the consumer world, which is great, but the corporate world is playing catch up in terms of their legacy platforms and systems that make it difficult, and that's where businesses like Modulr can help. I think from a challenge perspective on our side, and the adoption of embedded payments, automated payments, whatever you want to call it, pensions are heavily regulated. I was refreshing my memory. I think the first state pension was 1909, so it's over 100 years old. Regulations changing all the time. There's always new things come in. There's a lot of sort of legacy ways of doing things. And actually, when I was thinking about kind of what is the challenge we're facing in terms of the adoption of this, it's actually the regulation allows you to do what we think the future of pension payments looks like. It's actually the behavioural adoption of the people who are in charge of sort of saying, yes, that's a good thing, mate, go for it. So for us, certainly a big element of it is how do we educate people that moving from one payment mechanism to another payment mechanism, and by the way, this new payment mechanism is robust and digitally enabled and full audit trail and secure and all of this. How do you educate these people that this newfangled thing is for the best of the members and is secure and going to work? So for us, it's actually it's less about the sort of the systems and the regulation piece. It's more about educating the powers that be who say, yeah, that's a good thing, go for it, to sort of allow you to do it, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's still an element of fear out there at the moment, isn't there? There's so many new providers coming into the space that don't necessarily have the reputation that Modulr or Mantle do have in terms of what you've been doing. You've been in the market for a long time in terms of the fintech space. And it can sometimes be frightening for payroll professionals or pensions professionals because every time a new solution comes in, it's always to make it better, faster, and more compliant. But in reality, that isn't always the case with some of the providers, and that you do need to do your due diligence. But at the same time, we also want to make sure we are getting the most efficient, streamlined sort of software out there that's really going to make a difference to what we're trying to do. So from your perspective, Alex, what are some of the issues or challenges that the Modulr platform really does help address? Because it's a platform that I know it well because we use it in my business, right? So I know it's a trusted platform. It's something, fortunately, that I've been using for many years in what we do as a recruiter. So it's something that I can already trust, but our listeners won't already know the platform necessarily. But it does overcome a lot of challenges. As a payments provider, you see the market slightly differently. So I'd love to know what your platform does do and how it can support those that perhaps do have challenges and haven't maybe considered it today.
Yeah, look, there's a number of different things I think it will solve for that ultimately we really try and lean into to support people with. I mean, if you take it on the front end in terms of the payroll professional who uses the platform, really simply, the number one thing we try to do and we always push to do is to integrate with the software that they use. What that means for them is that rather than having to rely on sending information over to a client manually or potentially setting up payments on behalf of a client manually, instead, within their software, they are able to set those payments up within a couple of clicks. And it gives them the confidence that they're using their payroll software as the single source of the truth. They're reducing any opportunity for them to key things incorrectly, which as much as we'd love to think these things don't happen, inevitably they can creep in. But also it gives them the opportunity to utilize faster payments to set those payments up as well. And that's really where we are trying to bring payments forwards into the 21st century. So if you think about legacy payment systems, they are often run through 3-day pay cycles, potentially through backs, or you're having to build in a certain amount of admin time in order to be able to facilitate payments. Well, with Modulr, there is a 90-second payment window. So you can literally set up payments and within seconds, you can get those payments out to individual people. But of course, you can also schedule ahead of time as well. So for those people who do want to ensure that things are ready and set away, they can absolutely do that. But when those last minute amendments do need to come in, or when you do have those clients that, or your business itself that has really tight deadlines for turning around payroll, those 90-second payment windows can really be a benefit. And the example I always use is care homes. They are a great example of a type of business that will typically take their payroll right up to the end of the month, and they have an incredibly tight deadline to turn around that payroll to make sure that their employees are paid on time. And for them, if you can say, well, rather than having to use a 3-day pay cycle, you can do that within 90 seconds. That 3 days is a big deal for them. And I remember talking to someone specifically who said they had a 3 working hour turnaround to be able to get their payroll finished and then submitted to be paid. And you think it's such a pressure to put on the individuals involved in that to turn that kind of important information around in 3 hours. So giving someone back that extra couple of days can be really, really good. So from a setup perspective, we're really trying to help people in just taking some of the pressure off and ensuring they're getting it right first time, every time. But then when you come to, actually facilitating those payments, if you're an individual or a business sat on the other end of that who wants to send those payments out, we give you an incredibly simple workflow that allows you to add approvals in and to ensure that the right people are seeing those payments and making sure they're going out. But ultimately, you're having that confidence that when you click yes on that payment, you know that it's going to go out, and you know that it's going to go out on time every time, without having to use the hassle of your bank to necessarily do that. The other thing that we are really proud of as well, that I think sometimes can get lost when talking to tech companies, and I'm hoping they're going to appreciate the shout out, is we have a dedicated 24/7 support team that are accessible for every single one of Modulr's customers. And they're an incredibly important part of what we do, because it can be as simple as someone losing a password, but it can be as difficult as someone thinks that they've accidentally sent payments to the wrong place, or they've disappeared and they can't understand what's going on. And it's fine to say we can facilitate payments quickly and we can send them instantly, but if you can't get hold of someone when you have queries and questions to make sure that you're doing the right thing, well, then that kind of falls apart as well. And we're incredibly proud, and the best feedback we receive all of the time is on the support we provide on the side. And I think, as a user of a tech platform, or someone that's potentially going to advocate to a client to use a tech platform, you need to be confident that what you're saying is true and that you can actually deliver this to your clients. And if you don't have the support wrapped around that as well, the last thing you want to do is roll out something that you're going to have to switch off in 2-3 months time as well, and sort of have to save a bit of face. So I think it's a forgotten thing, but it's something that is very important as well, and that's one of the things that we certainly try and provide.
No, definitely worth the shout out. Look, I think when you're dealing with any kind of financial transaction, most customers or clients, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a business, need like to know there's a little bit of support there if you need it, right? I think the thing that I thought was quite interesting from your example is you referenced care homes, which unfortunately, potentially, it's quite a low income potential profession, right? And if you don't get paid on time, or if it's delayed, or if it's not right, you mentioned earlier with some of the front page news items we've had where unfortunately some of the really big employers haven't been able to pay for whatever reason things have happened, and also the Microsoft outage, which you mentioned as well. We know there's really close links between pay and financial health, which then impacts mental health, and there's a load of kind of knock-on domino impacts if we don't get this right, we don't get out on time. So I think, funny enough, you mentioned the care homes. I think it's really important that we do get those payments out on time and people can trust it, because when they trust in that payroll process, going right back to what James said at the start of the show, it means there are no complaints coming in. And a quiet payroll department is usually a successful payroll department, because they're not always on the phone dealing with things. Now, I know that obviously from your side, James, you're working now with Modulr on the pension side of things. Tell me a little bit about that collaboration and how that's improving the service, because this is something different. It's not something that everyone is doing in the way that you guys are doing it. So I'd just like to let our listeners know how innovation can evolve, and it's evolving in many different ways across the payroll spectrum. We've got AI and companies doing different things, but yours is quite unique. So I wonder if you could just bring it to life.
Yeah. So I guess a bit of background for Mantle first. So we were conceived or built just over 10 years ago, and it was conceived because in the pensions world, you had multiple platforms, multiple systems, all doing different things, all requiring data to be exported and imported from one system to the other. So at the very front end, you've got administration. So when you join a new business organization and you register for their pension plan and you say how much you want to contribute, and you let them know what the address is, and you tell them who your dependencies are and all of that. That's the upfront administration piece. And there was systems and platforms that do that. There's then a whole world within the pensions world around actuarial stuff. So this is things like risk management, scenario planning, pensions valuations, making sure that things are right and correct. And there's systems and platforms to do that. There's investment platforms where you choose what you invest in and where you divest from, etc. And there's platforms that do that. And the problem in the industry was that data exported, data imported. Again, people heavy, prone to errors, by the time you've exported the data, it's already out of date. So Mantle was built to be a central platform, had all of this in one place. And so it's got all the back end stuff. It's got all the front end stuff with member engagement. So we were kind of solving this sort of one source of data, one source of truth issue that existed. Now, payroll is kind of the last hurdle within the Mantle platform. So all the members' data's correct, all the investments are done correctly, all the actuarial analysis and everything it has been done. At the end of the month, the members on platform need to be paid. And so we had all this automation up front, and it was that last hurdle where we're going, hang on a minute, the last thing we do is generate a BAX file and then go off to a different system and upload it and do a member payroll. And then we have to go back to our system and reflect back in there, like the audit trail of what happened. So it was bringing those two things together. And that's where the conversation with Modulr evolved from. I mentioned before my background is fintech, so I had an understanding of the power of having payments within your platform and being able to have a big button that says pay members. The benefits of it are obvious and like robust and scalable and secure. So we're pretty excited about the future and what we're doing there and rolling it out to our clients.
Yeah, that's fine. And James, just staying with you for a moment, I just want to discuss some of the broader industry challenges, right? Because we know that there are a number of pressing issues really impacting the world of payroll and pensions at the moment, particularly in relation to the complex demands of a modern workforce arrangements. We've got contracts and shift work, emergency payments, which is something that Alex mentioned earlier on in the show. What are the kind of things you're doing to overcome some of those challenges? Or what can our listeners do? Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you, and I'm here to offer you a solution. Because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 5-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jjrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits.
Yeah, so for the members, I said at the outset, the members expect the pension to land in their bank account at the end of the month. And for them, they're less concerned about all the intricacies and behind the scenes stuff of how that happened. They just expect it to happen. Behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of turning of the handle and manual processes and things that through this relationship with Modulr we're trying to address. I think in terms of some of the sort of extreme examples of what we've seen and some things that have played out, there was an article in the Financial Times, I think it was, a few weeks ago, and the headline was £1 million pension goes missing. And basically this article was about an individual who was transferring their pension from one provider to another. And the reason they were transferring that, by the way, is believe it or not, lots of pension providers don't have an effective drawdown mechanism when you get to retirement. So you're putting money into a pension every month. It's accruing in there. When you retire, they go, oh, we don't know how to pay you each month. We haven't got the right systems and processes in place. You need to now shift it to someone else to do that. So anyway, so this individual was moving their pension, £1 million pension, from one provider to the other. The only way that other provider could accept it was check. So they had to request a £1 million check. They received the check. They posted it off. Fraudulent stuff happened within the postal system, and somebody intercepted that check, created a fake bank account and cashed it. Now, this individual, A, had lost their £1 million pension, for a period. B, had had to incur a load of legal fees trying to find out what had gone on. And C, neither party were accepting liability for it. Now, that's a very extreme and pretty rare example of some of the things that can play out in terms of money moving. And that's around transferring a pension. But even within the salary or the monthly payroll aspect of pensions, there's expectations now that people have super flexibility in how much they want to access, when they want to access it, and change that. So it might be that 1 month somebody says, I want to draw down £1,000 from my pension. It might be the month after they say, I want to buy a new car, so I want to draw down £10,000 from my pension. People want that flexibility to be able to alter the amounts that they're asking for. And historically, that's just not existed. It's been, this is what your pension is, this is what you're getting. If you want to change it, you can submit some forms and a letter, and it'll take 3 months for us to process it, and then we might be able to change it. So it's addressing a couple of things. One is just the flow of payment within pensions. And two is specifically that monthly payroll, giving that flexibility back to people to control how and when they get access to their own savings.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about yourself, Ernest? I know you mentioned the care home piece earlier in terms of that small window and being able to get those payments done. But obviously, as a payments platform, you also do a lot of work with those shift workers, with the rise of the gig economy and these kind of new workers that we need to process now. What are some of the things that Modulr are doing to help address some of the more payroll-specific challenges?
Well, I think, you kind of made the point there around the frequency potentially of some of the workers that are on these kind of contracts. Like very rarely now, or less and less certainly, do we see them on a typical monthly salary or something like that, where they're expecting a slower cadence of receiving funds. It's often that they are expecting to be paid weekly, and with that becomes a pressure of being able to turn those payrolls around and ensure that they are paid correctly on time as well. So as the payroll professional that is trying to pay that individual, there is a different kind of pressure that increases very much with those individuals. Not only that, but inevitably through the work that they're doing, it's not the same value every single month. There's a lot more calculation involved in that, and often at the end of that becomes a payment that needs to be made too. So it's an incredibly important thing to be able to be reactive in that scenario and to ensure that these people are getting paid correctly. And it's a completely different challenge to the more traditional, payrolls that potentially would be happening. So for Modulr, what we have to do is we have to be able to provide a facility that works for everyone. It needs to be an all-encompassing facility. And the reason we use faster payments in the way that we do is to allow people to have the time to be able to do these payments, but to also be able to react if they need to and make those emergency payments as well. And we speak to many people that will know that when it comes to specific contractors, if they don't get paid, they're not going to be there the next day. It's as simple as that. And if you can't provide that facility and you're saying to someone, we can pay them, but it's going to be in 3-4 days time because that's as quickly as we can turn this around. Or the alternative is we're going to have to potentially do it in a slightly more risky way, like using our own, company bank account to be able to transfer money around, or we're going to have to pay through the nose to be able to do that through our bank account. Well, it's not a process that people really want to do, and it can be an incredibly expensive process as well. So by offering a platform that allows people to turn these things around quickly, but also to be able to jump in for those emergency payments and when they do need to react, and to be able to do it without, charging them extensively for that facility, well, Modulr plays, a really nice hand there. And I think that's where we're seeing how we can support specifically those more kind of contractor type payments.
Yeah, for sure. Look, full transparency, we use Modulr for our contractor payments for that very reason. We can't afford to be placing contractors with clients who don't go because we've delayed the payments our end. As a payroll recruiter, we've got no excuses as a payroll recruiter for getting it wrong. So we've got to make sure of all the recruiters in the world that we're definitely paying our contractors quickly and on time. So that makes sense. Something you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned it in another question about the Microsoft outage, and a few little things that can impact processes. One thing I don't think is discussed enough in the current realm of technology is the aspect of security. We're seeing loads of increased ransomware attacks and different things now. And I think that with some of these archaic solutions, perhaps they're not as ready as they could be or should be to really protect against the modern ways of modern hackers and modern ways of doing things. And unfortunately, there's lots of nefarious things that people do. You mentioned one earlier about the fraudulent £1 million going missing, right? These things do happen. But often in the world of payroll particular, you find that it's people often don't think it's going to happen to them, so they'll get to it next time, and then it's too late. So I'd love to know a little bit more. I know obviously you've got two-factor authentication because I have to go through the process every time I use the Modulr platform, but I'd love to know a little bit more about how you guys see the industry going forward in terms of, how much of a concern is the rise of cybercrime, if you like, and what are the kind of things that our listeners can do to really help protect themselves? Because we know whether it's pensions or whether it's payroll, they have so much data, access to so many funds, they're absolutely going to be departments and potential systems that people are going to be targeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the really obvious first step is, can you look and be honest and see how many manual processes you are doing where you are moving information around that potentially you don't need to be doing? And what I mean by that is, a good example is, how many people do we see that they still send around payroll information via email? Like, is that the most effective way to be moving that information around? And to your point, Nick, it only takes one phishing email. It only takes one piece of information to be intercepted, in James's really specific, quite severe example, before all of a sudden things start to go wrong. So I would challenge back straight away and say, what manual processes you're doing where you're moving things around, that actually, if you can use tech, and whether that's Modulr or a different way to automate how you move things around, it's immediately going to start to reduce the opportunity for people to intercept and to reduce the risk of things going wrong. So I think that would be an incredibly good place to start. I think what tech companies like us will be able to do as the future goes forwards is, we will look to innovate into ways that we can try and automatically and preemptively tell you if we think there are things that are going wrong. And you're seeing it now in some of the platforms already, where they are starting to build this in, where they can talk to you and tell you if they think there's a problem that exists already. Things like confirmation of payee, specifically in the payment space, will tell you if there are issues with account details and person information when you're trying to upload payments. So there's already top technology out there that exists. I hate to say the word because I think it's probably a bit of a buzzword, but I think it will be really interesting to see how AI then takes that another step and ultimately starts to try and learn from the certain patterns of things that are going on with people's data, and ultimately try and, again, proactively suggest to them things that might be going wrong. So there's certainly things that people can be doing today, and I think there's things that we can be doing for the future that will ultimately try and make that a lot less risky, and ultimately try and reduce some of these attacks that we see on people.
Your perspective, James, anything you'd add to that?
I agree with everything Alex said. Actually, I think technology security or data security is just one aspect of it. We certainly at Mantle, one of our big USPs is the quality of the data in our platform. You can imagine pension plans that have been around for the last 50 years, and somebody left the business 30 years ago and nobody's had any interactions with them since, and now they're retiring. Like, the data quality can be shaky at best, and so one of the big things that we do is ensure that the data in our platform is correct and that the details are right for that individual, and that's everything through to bank details and payment details. And we can do everything in the world to make sure all of that is as accurate as it can be, and the calculations that are done within Mantle are right, and everything's perfect. If you then hand that off to individuals, there's potential for errors, and sometimes, as you said, it can be intentional errors and fraudulent stuff. Sometimes it can just be unintentional, and somebody's made a mistake and somebody's typed something into a spreadsheet and put a zero in the wrong place. So again, that's the gap we're closing, or trying to close ourselves, which is that final hurdle of we've done all that, the sort of the hard work in terms of making sure that all the data and the stuff is correct up front. That final transaction, that final, now the monies need to go, automate that bit and make that digitized. And then, of course, you need to make sure that the security and data protocols and everything wrapped around that are solid. But the more you can keep that within the system and less eyeballs and less people, the less prone to error it is, in my opinion.
Sure. Now, so for our listeners at the moment, obviously, both of you are going into different clients. You're modernizing systems, you're streamlining systems, you're reducing hours, often to just seconds, Alex, which I mentioned at the start, making payroll simpler, making pensions simpler. But if I'm a payroll or pensions manager listening to this at the minute, maybe I've just got into a new business, hopefully placed by ourselves, and you've got into a new company, and the first thing you want to do is to help modernize that payroll operation, what are the kind of, I don't know, let's say 3 or 5 things that, or quick wins, if you like, that people can start to look at to go, actually, where do I need to start this process of modernization, and what are some of the potential outputs or things I can achieve quite quickly? And I'm asking you that because often when you're in the trenches and you've been in one payroll department for 10 years and you've just moved into a new thing, you haven't necessarily seen the scope of what's out there, whereas you guys are going into different clients, seeing a very different payroll operations on a day-to-day basis. There may be a few kind of trends that are starting to emerge. You go, actually, Nick, often we see this, and this is one of the quickest ways we can overcome that challenge. Maybe I'll come to you first with that one, Alex.
I think if I was in that situation that you've just described, where I'm a payroll manager potentially going to a new business or a practice, and there's something there, to get me up and running that I want to be looking at, my number one thing would always be what happens when things go wrong. And I know we've touched on it a little bit before, but it's really easy to look forwards and go, wouldn't it be great if we can make this better? And, this shiny new toy that's going to help revolutionize how we do things. But fundamentally, as James and yourselves have put right at the start of the show, is how do we make sure that people get paid on time every time? And for me, if you don't have that backup, if you don't have something in place that says we can guarantee that happens every single time, then you need to be looking at that first of all. So that would always be the thing I would be suggesting to do. Now, obviously, very selfishly, as a payments provider that we would like to think that what we do is guarantee that through the services we provide. What we know is that people do have legacy systems that they already use. I mean, Bax has been around since the dawn of time, it seems. And, there's a lot of people that are very integrated with how that works. But again, it doesn't always give them the reactiveness they need should something go wrong. So what we offer and what we would encourage to do is to give something a little bit different in a faster payment service that essentially says, if things go wrong, you have that backup and you have something that you can go and make sure those people still get paid on time every time. So contingency 100% would be the thing, get it nailed down that no matter what, those employees are going to get paid every time. I think from there, you can start to build on the exciting things and, can we start to look at different softwares that speed up process? Can we start to look at different ways that we can potentially even offer benefits to employees like immediate access to wages and things like that? But get the fundamentals down first, make sure you can pay people first time every time.
It's good advice. How about yourself, James?
For us, I mean, pension plans come in all different shapes and sizes. You can have pension plans of 5 people, you can have pension plans of 50,000 people. And the systems and processes to run them are quite different. I mean, we find even today, you've got pretty big pension plans within some like notable organisations that have been run off the back of spreadsheets. And again, going back to kind of data quality and security and everything else, it's inefficient, it's prone to errors, it's dated, you name it. So for us, it is that introduction of just get the tech to do this, like that Mantle and some other systems, like that they're there to manage these workflows and make sure that data is accurate and make sure that members do get paid and make sure that members have engagement and they can log on an app and see what their pension's worth and see when they can retire and play with like different data points to see the impact on their pension. So for us, it's a case of kind of how do you replace these manual processes with technology? And for us as an organisation, how do we ensure we keep improving and innovating our product and making sure that whether it's the payments aspect or whether it's the member communication aspect or whether it's the as mentioned before, the actuarial analysis and how these things are valued and scenarios are planned, make sure that we embrace whatever technology we can to make that as good as it can be.
I mean, there's obviously an appetite for it because both Modulr and Mantle are expanding and you're growing very, very quickly. We weren't talking about payment providers in the payroll space 3 or 4 years ago. And now I've had several podcasts with different providers offering different solutions. So we know there's an appetite for it. And I spotted on the Mantle website that you're about to launch in the USA as well, James. And we've got 50% of our audience is based in the US. Tell us a little bit about your expectations for the USA and other challenges you're going to be faced with there. Going to be similar, do you foresee, as what you've been dealing with here or
Yeah, we are. We're launching in the US later this year, which is very exciting, and we're all quite bullish. And there's lots of activity going on to make that happen. From a pensions point of view, it's a massive market. It's 4 or 5 times that of the UK. The technology that's used there is in many parts pretty archaic, and we think we've proven in the UK and in Europe what doing something differently and sort of disruptive tech can do in the market, and we're excited about taking that to the US. We've got a few flagship partners and clients lined up that we'll be going live with, and yeah, I think in terms of sort of challenges and the stuff we've been overcoming there, it's kind of similar but different in terms of the way pensions are done. That there's different regulations, there's different ways things are computed. There's a whole host of stuff that we've had to consider and we've had to build into our own platform, and we've been doing that in collaboration with some notable organisations out there. But yeah, we're launching later this year. Very excited about it. We think it's going to be the first of a few different countries that we'll be going into over the next few years. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting going.
Very exciting. Well, we'll have you back maybe in a little bit later on in time. We'll see how that growth is going. We'll talk about the world of pensions in the USA. As we look into the future then, coming back to you, Alex, what are some of the trends or innovations you're most excited about when it comes to payroll?
I think that's a great question. I think there's going to be lots of interesting things that we'll have to innovate towards, just purely because of the way that the kind of climate of what people are, and how people expect to get paid is going to change. I kind of touched on it a little bit a minute ago, but I think we see more and more things like access to funds whenever people want it is an emerging trend that just continues to grow and grow. And there will be things like that people will just inevitably expect, I'm sure, within the next few years, that we will then have to be able to cater for as well. So it's not just going to be about, big innovations and nice big shiny things, but I think just fundamentally how people want to get paid is going to be the biggest driver, and ultimately how people then turn that into a benefits package or into just a standard employee offer is going to be really fascinating to see. So I think how we can incorporate that into what we do is certainly going to be interesting. I think the more people get squeezed in the current, their current day-to-day life when it comes to money. I mean, we hear things like cost of living crisis, and we know that bills continue to rise on certain things. There is going to be an mounting pressure, and ultimately how people get paid is going to be a crucial part of that. So I think we're just going to have to ride that wave as well, and ultimately at the core of what we're going to try and do, we need to keep that in mind, that it is about ensuring people get paid correctly on time every time, and making sure that they can get access to money when they need it to. And I would challenge not only ourselves but any of the payment tech providers out there to make sure that's fundamentally at the heart of what they're trying to do, because we can all be feature rich and we can all show off what we can do, but if we can't do that for people, then we're not in it for the right reasons. So yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that pushes what we do in the future.
Yeah, I think it's nice we bring it back to what payroll's really about, right? It's about paying people accurately, compliantly, and on time. And whatever that time frame is, we maybe there's a dissolution of the monthly pay cycle as we know it now. So what on time was 4 years ago, which is every month, may become every hour, every day, whatever. But it still needs to be compliant and accurate, and it needs to be in the bank accounts. And I think sometimes that message does get lost with the amount of noise we're getting in this payroll space. It's a really exciting, innovative space right now. So I think it's good to bring it back to what it's all about. How about yourself, James? I don't know if there's any major innovations in the pension industry, perhaps, which we can bring to our listeners, maybe things I haven't thought about or our listeners haven't thought about that you're excited about. Yeah,
I think there's two big things that we're quite excited about in the near future. One is a bit of scene setting. So in the pensions world, there's two types of pensions. There's something called defined benefit, and this is your sort of legacy final salary type stuff that big organizations used to offer, or the public sector still offers, where it's a fixed monthly payment. That's what you receive when you retire. It's based on how long you're in the business. And you get that until the day you die, essentially. So that's known as defined benefit. And that we do a lot in that space, and a lot of our clients use our platform in that space. And it's a huge, huge market. I think there's over £2 trillion worth of defined benefit pensions still to be paid out to members over the next, 50 years. And then there's defined contribution. And defined contribution is what we probably recognise, which is you contribute to your pot each month, that builds up. When you retire, you draw down on it, and when it's gone, it's gone. And it's in that space where a lot of the innovation is happening, because that's kind of the new breed of pensions. As it actually defined benefit's a lot bigger than defined contribution, but defined contribution is growing rapidly. And I mentioned before about drawdown products, and these pension providers who can't offer this ability to get your pension out, which again sounds bizarre, are putting a lot of thought into how they want to keep that money in their ecosystem and earn management fees and all of that. So what are the exciting products you can offer your members that keep them with you? And it is around that flexibility. So a world where you have a mobile app and you can say, I want to retire now, and you press a button, and then when you want to draw down money on a monthly basis, it gives you education and feedback. Like, this is the impact of doing this. This is what your cash flow might look like in the future. And it guides you through that. So there's a lot, and we're building in Mantle. We're actually building a drawdown product for exactly that. So there's a lot of exciting stuff from a sort of member point of view happening. The other big one, which people are generally not aware of, is, and it's been pushed out a few times, but next year that something called Pensions Dashboard is being launched by the government. And what that is essentially a government portal that people can go to, and you do an ID validation check, and that portal will then pull back and display every pension you've ever had and what you've got in them. So you as an individual have a full view of everything. Because some people have a little pension over here when they work somewhere and a little pension over here. So getting that single view would be brilliant for people, and it'll raise the profile of pensions, and it will give people that ability to see what they've got across all their different pension plans. That's a massive thing. It sounds obvious and it sounds straightforward. The biggest thing is all the pension businesses going, I need to provide data to this portal in an accurate form that I'm confident is correct, because that's going to go to the member and say, you have a pension of X with me, and I need to be sure that they are the right person and they are who they say they are. So again, we're doing a lot in that space from a pensions dashboard point of view, in terms of helping people get that data into the form and having the integration with the government portal to pump that data in. And I think the announcement of dashboard will be great for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. And hopefully it'll plug the gap of all the lost pensions, right? A lot of people don't know what pensions they've got or what pot they're in. I think, we're talking about payroll, we've got to be careful sometimes, because I know pensions are very regulated, but you can't give tax advice as payroll professionals. But interestingly, you were talking about some of the things that can guide you. I would imagine, I don't know if I'm correct on this, thinking this or not, but if you opt into the correct kind of AI tool, I would imagine that AI probably can give you some guidance on, why don't you save this here? And it can analyze your expenditure and say, actually, why don't you put this in an ISA and this here and this towards your pension? And it can give you some advice without the payroll professional having that burden. I think that's probably where we're looking to, you say, cost of living crisis, we need to manage our money in smarter, more intuitive ways. I think that's where AI can have a really positive influence potentially on how we manage our finances and how that links to financial wealth and wellness to all the other bits and pieces. So it's interesting that you brought that in your response, James. It just triggered something I was thinking about on the payroll side.
100%, and we've done a lot of research and thinking ourselves into how AI can help with member education, and you're right. There's a fine line between advice versus guidance. But interestingly, there's legislative conversations now. The two things people worry about are people putting enough money into their pension in the first place, and then when it comes to retirement, are they aware of the impact of basically taking it all too soon and spending it all too soon, and making sure. And that last bit, there's a whole bunch of conversations happening now around people being offered advice or guidance at that point to say, this is where you're at, this is what you've got, this is what will happen if you draw down X. Because with the growth in SIPs, or self-invested pension plans, and platforms where you can do this all yourself, like, people have more control over doing that, and the government want to make sure that people are aware of the impact of drawing down.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you, James and Alex, for taking us on a deep dive into the future of payroll technologies today on the Payroll Podcast. It's been really good to get your valuable insights on the show, both not just from a payroll perspective, but also from a pensions one, which is lovely to have on the show, and to have two guests for the price of one is absolutely fantastic for everyone listening today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, of course, to you, our listeners, for tuning into the Payroll Podcast. If you did enjoy today's episode, do remember to review the show if you can. If you're feeling really generous, share it with your payroll and pensions colleagues and friends as well, so we can really grow the show and really help raise the profile of payroll and pensions globally. Just need to say one final thank you to James Whittingham and to Alex Kill for joining me today. My name is Nick Day. I've been your host. I look forward to being the next insightful episode of the Payroll Podcast real soon. Alex, James, thank you. Today's episode of the Payroll Podcast has been sponsored by Deel, the all-in-one global people platform that simplifies how you pay your global teams. Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deel's fully managed global payroll eliminates third-party handovers and it provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes to payroll regulations before they even become an issue. And with 24/7 monitoring and best-in-class security protocols, your sensitive data is always protected. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes and book your demo with Deel today.